Prime Minister Muscat, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
This has really shocked not just your country, but the world. And there's been an outpouring of grief and support and anger for the journalist. You've called it barbaric. Can you give us the precise details, or as much as you know, of what actually happened?
Well, I think in the situation that we are, we know that it was a bomb. The type of explosives that were used, I think, are being determined at this very time through the independent investigators we have, both locally and from abroad, from the States and from other countries. And I think it would be premature to say the way in which it was ignited. Definitely, it was a very professional job, and we're taking this very seriously. So we are at a time in our country where we're not only in deep sorrow, but we're very, very angry at what happened.
Daphne Galizia was an equal opportunity, fierce crusader. She didn't spare the government, she didn't spare the opposition. She was determined to get to the bottom. She also tried to get to the bottom of allegations against you, against your wife, against your chief of staff. She died 30 minutes after publishing a blog post accusing your chief of staff of corruption yet again. And her last words were, quote, "There are crooks everywhere you look now. The situation is desperate." You know, it's pretty harsh thing to say and then be killed 30 minutes after that.
Well, I think she said even harsher things before, against myself, against my collaborators, against other people in government and from other parties. So I don't think it's fair to associate that particular post to the fact. Look, she was a very harsh critic of mine. I think the harshest I ever had. She has been writing about me, against me for the past decade or so. And we are living in a free world. That's something that we always tolerated, in the sense that it's obviously her right to write these things. It's obviously my right to protect myself if I feel aggrieved in court. And that's how it always happened. This is why this is shocking for us, because this is simply not on. I will not point fingers, because I think it's extremely premature to say it was these guys who did it, or it was this motive. I think right now what I'm here to say is that this country stands for rule of law, and this country does not accept such things. And this comes from one of her main targets politically, but I can never accept such an action. It's not what we stand for as a country. What she wrote about me some time ago, I found exception on one particular thing that she wrote, and I went to court where I asked for an independent inquiry, and I said, if something is found, what she wrote is true, I would resign immediately. And, you know, that's how things are done in a democracy. So this is completely out of this world for us. This is simply not on.
So let's just be clear. I believe you're talking about a report a couple of months ago where she found a whistleblower, allegedly, who told her that you were the owner of a company that was, involved in corruption and payoffs. You say, as you've just said, you went to court and you asked for an independent magistrate. Is that case ongoing?
Yes, it's still ongoing, and I believe that, I'm sure that she gave her deposition to the magistrate. So any evidence that this so-called whistleblower, the credentials of whom have been put in doubt, might have given her are there. And I stand by my word, where it's not only whether it's proven, it's whether there is an indication that whatever was written in that story is true, I would resign immediately. So definitely, it's a situation where we cannot really understand, and we cannot really fathom the way in which this was carried out, and the fact that someone decided to kill a person because of something that she might have written, or for something she might have wanted to write in the future.
Well, she was, as I said, and as you all know better than I do, a crusading anti-corruption journalist, a dedicated investigator, even despite the threats and the dangers. And as you know, there was a lot of concern, certainly in the European Parliament. You were grilled many times, including not just by Maltese MEPs, but by other Europeans, amid 4 at the time, ongoing corruption probes. I mean, that is why you had to call a snap election. So it's really, I mean, there's a lot there.
Yes, but I don't know what you're implying, because I won that election, and I won it with a larger majority. So if you're implying that there was something in government for doing this, or that government mandated this, or that the government has anything to do with this, I fail to connect the dots. What I'm saying is that as a government, and as a prime minister, and as a person responsible and democratically elected, I need to make sure that everyone has in our country, as we have, the right to say and write whatever we want. We actually removed the institution of criminal libel during our tenure in office. We have made whatever we could, and we will continue doing whatever we can to make sure that there is freedom of speech. So I refute your allegation. I see where you're coming from. I could just play politics and say, look, the last things that she wrote was about the opposition party, and she got threats from there, she said. But, you know, I don't think that interests your audience. I think what interests your audience is a situation in a country where we are all shocked about what happened, and I'm here to say that this is not what we stand for. Whatever our thoughts, whatever our ideas, whatever our contrast, this is not how things are done.
Prime Minister, as you know, I would never, ever make any allegations. I was merely describing what you were facing and the kind of pressure you were coming under at the European Court. But I do want to ask you this. In this highly charged atmosphere, one of Daphne's sons, Matthew, who himself heard the explosion, ran out to try to see what had happened, describes the most abominable scene. He wrote on Facebook this morning, "A culture of impunity has been allowed to flourish by the government in Malta. It is of little comfort for the Prime Minister of this country to say that he will, quote, not rest until the perpetrators are found, when he heads a government that encouraged that same impunity." And he goes on to say, "My mother was assassinated because she stood between the rule of law and those who sought to violate it, like many strong journalists." What do you say to that as Prime Minister?
Well, I see and read the words of a son who has just found his mother dead in pieces. So I think I would be insensitive to take exception to anything he says. I think I would have written or said worse things if I found my mother dead in an exploded car. So at this point in time, I think out of respect, I will just say that I understand what he means, but that my role as Prime Minister is to make sure that people are brought to justice, and whoever it might be that commissioned and executed this barbaric act is actually brought to justice as soon as possible.
And so finally, on that note, her family, I believe, has asked that the magistrate who's been assigned to conduct the inquiry into her death be reassigned because of a potential conflict of interest, because of other issues that the magistrate was looking at regarding, you know, some of the legal cases that were brought up because of this.
No, I think that her family's exception was because the magistrate who was assigned the case, not by government, but through a roster system, was criticized harshly by Mrs. Caruana Galizia various times. When they filed the case to have the reassignment, government signaled that we actually agree that it should be reassigned, and the magistrate herself decided this morning that she should relinquish the case and have it assigned by the Chief Justice to one of her other colleagues.
All right, so do you believe then at this point that you will get to the bottom of this? And if it turns out that even the highest level are found to be complicit, guilty, whatever the legal term is, that there will be no impunity?
There will be absolutely no impunity for anyone. This is a country where rule of law reigns supreme, and I will make sure that justice is done and there will be absolutely no impunity for anyone, be it from any part of the political spectrum, if there is politics involved in this, or from any other sector.
Prime Minister Joseph Muscat, thank you for joining me on this very difficult day.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for your understanding.